The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's also the home for Autism Live. We're thrilled to be here with you on this wonderful Wednesday morning. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours. You know I love Wednesday because we're here and we always have a special guest in the morning. Now, most of the time, we have a segment that we start with. It's called Ask Dr. Doreen. But as I have said to you on the few occasions when she cannot be here, sometimes the world calls her away and we have to willingly relinquish her because there are things that she has to go and do. But we're really thrilled that we have sort of a semi-regular fill-in for her now. Evelyn Kung is with us today. We even have dubbed this Ask Evelyn Kung. And Evelyn is the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. She's going to be answering your questions in just a second. But I want to fill you in on a couple of things. If you're new to the show, this entire show is meant to be interactive. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your questions, your concerns, even if you just need a place to rant. This place is a safe place in which to do that. Now, there are many different ways that you can interact with us, many different ways that you can watch the show. So Samantha's going to show you some of the different ways that you can see what we're doing and interact. While she's doing that, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. We're about to get a brand new website that's going to make it all look totally different, but until that time, what you do is click the triangle that's on the computer screen. That starts the live show playing or the most recently recorded live show. And if you want to interact on the homepage, you put your cursor in the box that says your questions. All you do is type and hit enter. You don't have to log in. You don't have to go get a credit card because it's totally free. And you don't have to have a username or a password and something that you remember and then forget the password and wait for us to send it to you. There's none of that. You don't even have to prove that you're not a robot. Can we woohoo? We wanted it to be as simple as possible for you, and it's totally anonymous. If you write into us via that format, though, please tell us where in the world you are, like maybe the closest major city, so that we get an idea of what resources might be available to you, because it's not the same everywhere, right? All right. And then, of course, you can write in on any one of the other ways that we're live. You can write on Facebook, YouTube. We're monitoring all those different places as well as the live feature. But then we will know who you are. So depending on the question, find the way that's best for you. We tried to make it varied and different. Don't forget that in our second hour today, we have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Allspot-Jackson will be here with me. Our special guests today, Vince Redmond, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist, is going to be with us to talk about resentment. Oh, won't that be fun? Because we all have it and in varied and different ways. So we're going to talk about moving through resentment and how to get past it, right? And then we also have a wonderful guest, Somnath Sungupta, which I hope I'm saying it even close to right. But he is from Every Life Works. He's an amazing dad who has started a program to make sure that individuals with different abilities have a pathway to careers. How much do we love that? So we're going to be talking with him as well, and we've got some in the news, and we want to hear from you guys as well. All of that having been said, I want to welcome, you've been sitting here very patiently, Evelyn Kung is here, clinical director, as I said, for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. She's a wealth of knowledge, been working in this field for a really long time, more than 20?
More than 25 now.
More than 25 years working with individuals on the spectrum, and you spend a fair amount of time in the air, flying to different places and seeing different people and touching base, and wealth of knowledge. So we're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
And working with individuals all over the spectrum and all ages over the spectrum. I especially love when you talk about the teens and young adults, because man, she's got some good information, you guys. But she's going to be answering questions that you guys have sent in and continue to send in. We do like to give a disclaimer at the start of the show that there is no expert in any field that can give individual specific advice in this format. It would be a disservice to our expert. It would be a disservice to you and to whoever the individual is that's on the autism spectrum, because you'd need to have much more interaction.
You need to have contact with the child,
yeah,
to really know them and who they are.
Absolutely.
Just like any other child.
Yes, absolutely. So having said that, please write in and ask your question, and she'll give you some really good information, and then you can take that and go make decisions on what to do next or what question to ask next. But it will be general in nature is what I'm getting to. So anyway, but we thank you for giving us this time. You're going to be with us this week and next week.
That's right.
So that's a very exciting thing for folks to know. I'm going to start with the first question here, which they wrote to Dr. Doreen, but we're going to give it to you. Dear Dr. Doreen and Shannon, my son is 9 and has OCD and ASD. He's in a regular ed class and is very bright, but extremely defiant. He has many refusals throughout his school day. In math, he hides under the desk and refuses to even try the modified work his teacher offers. He often runs out of the classroom and hides in the hall, especially when he has a disagreement with a classmate. How do we motivate him to do his classwork? He had a point card, but that isn't working anymore. He likes computers, art, and reading. Maybe he can earn that for doing his work. We have his IEP this week. Thank you for your help. I love the show and even watch old episodes. And thank you for writing in. A lot there.
Very much. There's so many layers to this question.
Right.
Yes. So a lot of times, especially if he's a bright child, he doesn't want to be wrong. And then I think a lot of times, if you're saying that he's OCD also, the whole obsessive compulsive part of ASD, whether it is diagnosed separately or just apart, a lot of it has to do, with the anxiety that comes from it. And really it's the fear of not being in control.
And so I think a lot of us can relate to that.
When we feel out of control, we try to handle more things or have more control of things, and the people around us get a little bit nuts. And we aren't always good about communicating what's making us anxious, or even identifying the feeling as a typical adult. So when you have these kids who are on the spectrum, who, if they're ASD, that means they have social communication issues. That means they're not reading body language, they're not reading facial expressions. They're very concrete thinkers, so they're missing all of this abstract information that's going on. And for the brighter the child is, the more fear there is in being wrong. And just imagine your life and you're only getting some of the information. You're not getting it all, because if he isn't reading social cues and he isn't understanding the abstract information that's coming, or if he's missing foundation information from previous years, he's just going to be afraid.
Yeah.
And that fear makes him want to control, and one thing he has control of is his own self.
Yeah.
And so when things become overwhelming, or he doesn't know how to ask the question that he needs to be able to do his math, or just even ask what's coming next, he's gonna just take off. That's just what you do. You can take off in many ways, where you blank out, where you fall asleep, where you just be defiant and refuse to do any of it, and not be able to communicate and say, like, well, I don't understand what you really want me to do. Or to be able to say, well, you said that we were going to do this earlier, but you changed. I still want to do that last, before the schedule change. And just not understanding all that information makes being in a classroom really difficult for our kids. so much difficulty. And so the thing is, if he is running out of the room, he's escaping from something.
Yeah.
That's just like the ultimate physical escape. It's
Right.
just like, I'm taking off. And he probably doesn't understand, he's probably missing a lot of social cues from his peers. So when disagreements happen with peers, a lot of times it's the kids didn't even see half the information that was coming because it's non-vocal.
Yeah.
And then the other half that they saw, maybe they misunderstood the language. If there's some auditory processing, they didn't hear everything. There's interpretations and inferences that peers expect of our child, and our child doesn't know how to make inferences in that social setting. So there's even more information missing, and there's just massive miscommunication. And probably his only way to get away is to get out.
And I love this because it gives us a context to understand what this behavior is. I think that for most of us who aren't BCBAs and aren't schooled in behavioral arts, we see behavior that we don't understand, and it immediately brings up fear in us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and as for parents, it's like, is that random behavior, and is this going to be the rest of our lives? And I don't know what to do, and so it brings up this fear. I know as a teacher, a former teacher, when I would see a kiddo engage in a behavior that I didn't understand, it brought up fear about, I don't know what to do about that. How do I teach this child? All of those things. So understanding that it's just behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and that behavior is a form of communication,
Yes.
and figuring out what the communication is so valuable. But now that we have context, what can they do?
And okay, so now the point of the question here is, how can we get him to do his work?
Right.
How do we motivate him? There's all these issues he's trying to run away from.
Right.
So that's one context. But also, with a lot of the kids who are bright, you can ask them what they want. You can just ask them.
It's that easy.
But you have to give them all the rules for it.
Okay.
The limits. So being really clear, like how long can he do work before he starts getting anxious or distracted or whatever. And it might depend on the type of work. If it's new work, he can probably only work a shorter time than a longer time.
Okay.
And if it's old work that he knows really well and he likes, he can probably sit there for a long time and do the work.
Okay.
So those two activities should receive different types of rewards. You know, in the behavioral world, if a child already has mastered something, we're still going to give them reinforcement, but it's not going to be like the big reinforcement to work through something new or changing old ways or being flexible.
Right.
So there has to be a different weight to these rewards. So you were saying that he likes computers and art and reading. And a lot of times I always think, what can stay in school? Because a lot of people will say, well, you can have this many minutes of computer at the end of the school day when you get home. But sometimes our kids can't wait that long.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we try to figure out, like, how much can they wait? If he likes to read, I have parents bring in a special book that he really wants, but we give it to the teacher, and the teacher's the only one that he can get it from.
Right.
And so maybe he has to do X amount of work before he can have access to that book. And then when he has that book, it's his time. No one bothers him. No one's putting any reading assignments on it.
Yeah.
You know, it's really his free bonus time, reward time for doing good work. You can also earn minutes on a computer. A lot of times people will think, wow, you earn 20 minutes versus 10 minutes. But if the game he wants to play is 30 minutes, those 10 or 20 minutes aren't going to be rewarding
Right.
enough because you're going to cut him off partway.
Right. And that's going to lead to more
And
frustration
that leads
and
to
tantrums.
yeah, and a lot of times that's something that people don't realize.
Yeah.
In order to play this game that you want to play, you need a good chunk of time, and if you're only able to provide a part of it, that's not a reward for him.
Yeah. You got to find something else besides that game.
Yeah, or there has to be little reinforcers along the way, and then on the long run, at the end of the week, maybe he gets an hour to do his whole game.
Right.
You know, or after 3 days, whatever it may be. But there's all these things that will motivate him. They just have to have different weights, and we actually have to really know. And like, if he is in a typical class and doing all this great work and he's smart, you can ask them, like, what do you really want?
Yeah.
Like, and really listen to them. And then you, as the person or your behavior analyst, can modify and say, like, okay, so you can shape his behavior. You know, right now I can give you a break every after one side of a worksheet.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have a small break with your book, but you have to come back to the worksheet. And then if you complete both sides of the worksheet in one sitting, maybe you do get computer time, but you can't go on a certain website. You have to do this other website that can be done in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it may be. But a lot of times for these kids, I actually ask them, what do you want? And once I hear what they want, then I'm going to modify how much of it they get it, when they
Right.
get it, what do they really want from it?
Right.
and that really matters. Like some kids will say, I want to go on this website, and they want to complete the game. That's one kid. But then another kid wants to go on and only see a certain part. And if that part doesn't show up till later on,
Right.
they could stop it without finishing it, but maybe they just wanted the one part.
Right.
You really have to, it can't just be, I want this video game. It's like, what do you specifically really want from this video game or this computer site or whatever it may be? Do you want just 10 minutes of nobody bothering you and you can just go on and browse anything you want? Sure. You can give them that. But it's the kid telling you, this is what I would like, or here are a number of things that we would like, and doing a preference assessment.
Yes.
Figuring out what is stronger, and it might depend on the day.
Right.
So maybe you have a group of reinforcers, but when he comes in, he's going to have different days. We all feel like different things every day.
Sure.
So maybe there's something that he really wants. Teaching him to ask for what he wants when he comes in is great, to be able to say, today, can I work for whatever it may be? And, you can have point cards and all break cards and all these things, but if it really doesn't get to the point where he actually gets access to whatever that reinforcer, it's not going to reinforce his behavior to do work.
Okay, so she's got an IEP coming up this week. So this all sounds like she needs a really good behavior intervention plan, and that she's got to get the school on board to have some flexibility built into it. I hate a behavior intervention plan that is so rigid that the teacher doesn't have options. And because as a teacher, like every circumstance doesn't fit everything. I would guess that if she asked the school to use the Skills BIP Builder, which is the behavior intervention plan, that they could get it done a lot quicker.
Yeah, definitely, especially if you don't have a BCBA local, or maybe even a behaviorist who's really even trained to write behavior plans.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so many schools, they'll say they have a specialist or behaviorist, but when you actually ask the background, they've just been assigned to take care of a child's behaviors. They really don't know how to write a good behavior intervention plan. They try things from other kids.
Well, and the thing is, too, that if you're going to start a behavior intervention plan from scratch, it takes a lot of time. And one of the things that they discovered with the Skills BIP Builder is that even if you give it to trained people, it's going to just generate it that much faster, because it automatically takes care of some things that it automatically will give you cautions about making sure that you don't, for instance, leave out a replacement behavior, which is something I guess that happens on a regular basis, and making sure that you do something that's scientifically based.
And before
results.
you address any behavior intervention plan, you have to have a functional assessment to figure out what the function of the behavior is. And the thing is, in a school setting, there might be multiple functions.
Yeah.
And so what's also good that's on Skills is there's something called a CFA, which is a card indirect functional assessment. And a parent can just think of one of the behaviors and go in and answer the questions, and it'll plot out on a bar graph all the different functions and show you what's stronger, and if there are multiple functions controlled. And when I say multiple functions, it means that sometimes he's doing a behavior to escape, but sometimes he's doing a behavior to get attention from someone.
Right.
And, there's other things too. And if he has a lot of anxiety and there's OCD, that means he's going to want to have a lot of control too. And the kids who want control, I understand that their language has to be really good.
Yeah.
Because they have to be able to communicate what they want control of and how much control.
Yes.
So if your child's spoken language, and I'm not here saying that they talk a lot, because a lot of our kids talk a lot but don't say much.
Right.
It has to be a really good ability to say, like, I need X in this form for this amount of time, before I'm going to feel better.
Yeah.
Or I need to know when something is coming. And so you're talking about abstract, something in the future or something that was in the past. You said later. What does later mean? Sometimes later means 2 minutes, and sometimes later is, 6 months from now in the summer. So really, I think, like with a child who likes control, for teachers, one of the recommendations for your IEP is that they would speak clearly and in concrete language and not general vague terms.
Yeah.
There are, some teachers rely a lot on vagueness. We'll do that later. In the future, we'll see. And for those kind of words, make our kids really anxious.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what later means. What do you mean in the future? Now I'm going to worry all the way until the future starts. The future could be now, or the future could be middle school in a couple of years.
Right.
So learning how to speak very clearly and concretely to the child is an important skill for all the staff to do. being able to get a good preference assessment on your IEP. And it might be a big general preference assessment, but it might be learning how to do one every day at the beginning of the day to figure out what he wants to work for.
Yeah.
Creating a whole reinforcement system, explaining all the rules about what the system is, and if there's changes, whether you have to prime him or give him warning about upcoming changes in the classroom. Because that's one of the things of a lot of kids at this age don't like their peers because their peers are really spontaneous.
Yeah.
They like adults because adults are very measured, they'll accommodate the child. And as the kids become older, high school, like in some ways high school's better because people socially know how to give the controls. They recognize when their peers need more information.
Yeah.
But the younger grades,
Yeah.
kids are just spontaneous because it's fun. And it drives our kids nuts.
Well, they're also, this is entering the era too when they're mean. When, I didn't realize, I thought bullying started significantly later, but I remember when Jem was like 8 and 9, and, before that, he could walk up to interact with a kid and he could say, my shoe is blue, right? Because that's what was relevant to Jem. And they would go, cool, my shoe is red, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then suddenly you get to be 8 and 9, and my kid would go, my shoe is blue, and they'd go, so? And then the interaction wouldn't happen. And then if he did it again, they'd be like, you're weird. Because they were trying to get status and not look weird. So I don't want to be with a kid who says my shoe is blue.
Yeah,
It's a
8,
tough
9 is rough because half the kids are moving on to that social understanding, social wanting, status issue, and half are not.
Ugh.
So I think that conflict of just how you grow developmentally, you see it really at 9, like 4th grade. I feel like you see it because half the kids have this other understanding, perspective taking, and how to manipulate perspectives, and the other half are still like happy-go-lucky.
Yeah. And some of the girls are accessing their inner Bubba witch.
Fourth grade is really miserable.
Yeah, I don't think any of us would want
9
to go
years
back and
old
do that.
is very miserable.
But I hope all the parents were listening when you were talking about all the things that provoke anxiety, because so many of our kids have anxiety. And being more concrete with our language and encouraging teachers to be more concrete with their language, a really beneficial thing.
And one thing is, I mentioned that the child has to be language. So many times parents come in and they're saying, my child talks a lot, he's fine. But I'm like, no, he talks a lot, but he doesn't say much.
Okay.
And what speech therapists will say, you'll see it in reports where they'll say he overuses words.
Okay.
And that means the vocabulary isn't big enough. And honestly, for anxiety control, social understanding, you really need good command of language.
And so how can they be working on that to make that better so that they have the words to use to convey when they want control?
I think it's really like skills will help you because you can see, and also like learning, like what does a child hear and understand versus what does he actually use?
Yes.
Usually there's a huge discrepancy. And I always say that the descriptor words or attributes are really the word. They tend to be more abstract, so our kids choose not to use it. If you say it to them, they understand what it means. But if they have to find the word to use it, that's usually where their problems are.
Yeah.
Is they don't have the language, they hear it and they understand it, but they can't get it out and ask all their questions.
Yeah.
It's very important that your child knows how to ask good questions because that's one way that you control anxiety. And when I say good questions, multiple parts, not like what is that, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be learning to give context first. Being able to say, remember earlier you said whatever, but we're not doing it now. So when are we going to do it? And that's one question.
Right.
And so they have to have good command of language. And so many kids I see coming at this age talk a lot, but they don't have good language.
Well, and I want to point out, I know that people are probably sick and tired of me talking about skills, but if you are someone who is like, wait a second, they're not teaching that in my child's school. They're teaching labels, which I hear all the time, and they don't teach the other parts of conversation. I just want to let you know it's all available in skills. All of the lessons to be able to take somebody through learning labels and then building towards conversation, it's all in skills. And skills is relatively inexpensive. As a parent, you can subscribe to it and be using the lessons. You can subscribe to it and feed the lessons to your child's speech teacher. You can. We have parents that have done that. You can also talk to your school and ask them to get it. And if they have a curriculum that's working and you're getting to conversation, great. But if you don't, and I think a lot of parents don't, this is really effective and the most economical way of having what has been shown to be
So
effective.
just for in skills, there's the language curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
That language curriculum ends at 7 or 8. So if your child is 9 or 7 or 8, they're supposed to do everything in the language curriculum. Because then when it becomes social language, we moved all the social language issues to or concepts into the social curriculum because it's social pragmatic language. So I always tell people, like, if you think your child uses a lot of language and is really good with all these things, go through skills and see, like, can he do everything in the language curriculum, because that only goes to age 8.
Okay.
They should have everything done.
But then if you find that your child can do all of that, then there's a whole other set of lessons that are in social language
Yes.
that have to do with language. And that's, I mean, I remember reading through it and there's stuff I still need to be working on. Okay. I think probably everybody would find that there's something in there.
Well,
Maybe not you.
No, you
but-
look at it and you say,
I mean-
oh, that's why that didn't work.
Well, there's one lesson that's just about ending a conversation. And I remember coming home and talking to my husband and going, I now understand why whenever we're ready to leave a party, it takes us an hour, because I don't know how to do this. Like, if it weren't for the fact that, Samantha goes, you have 30 seconds and then the show is over, I would probably be here at 8 o'clock at night still talking and going, we're going to end the show soon. I have to have boundaries. Anyway, all right, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to take more of your questions, so stick with us.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to Talk of Facts. We hear questions all the time, and we want to give you the answers that help make your journey in autism easier and more navigatable. Less than a year ago, we interviewed the top 100 doctors in the United States working with children on the spectrum, and we asked them a question in the cloak of secrecy. What are the top 3 mistakes parents living with autism do? Number 1, and the one that makes me laugh the most, is when they use their physician as a marriage and family therapist. 1, the doctors told me it made them uncomfortable, and 2, they were highly unqualified to provide that type of advice. So the night before your physician appointment with your MAPS doctor, get together with your spouse, significant other, and write out the list of the targets and the agenda that you want to cover at the physician's appointment. Get in sync. Then you'll be definitely spending less time and not making that doctor so uncomfortable. Second thing that was the most common mistakes parents living with autism make is they want to go too fast. And really, you want to pace yourself in the autism journey. We all know that we want to get our kid to be the best they can be and hopefully recover from autism. And what a lot of the doctors have told me is that you want to really pace yourself. 1, to let the labs be your guide. And 2, work with your physician on the prioritization and the delivery of the different medical interventions. The third most common mistake they felt families made was giving up too soon. And what you need to know is they're invested. They're looking at wanting to get the best from your child. But I tell you that when I got that and consolidated the 100 interviews with these physicians, most of the doctors who brought that up had tears in their eyes. They want you to know that they're in the fight with you, and they want you to know that hope is really real. It may take hard work and it may take time, but to not give up and to stay in the game. So let Taka help you. We'll have some more Taka facts for you in the future, real questions and real answers for the autism journey.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Evelyn Kung. She's the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and she is answering your questions. We talked in the last segment about skills, and I always hold up the little thing, but I realize it's hard for some of you to read. The phone number for skills is 877-975-4559, or you can visit skills4autism.com. Again, the phone number is 877-975-4559. I do use skills. They don't pay me anything for saying that. I actually love Skills, and Skills has been, I am their biggest fan. I make no apologies. I want to say hi to a bunch of people who are watching us on Facebook, some from McAllen, Texas, some from Dubai, the Arab Emirates. We love that. Seattle, Washington is with us. And we've got Northern Ireland on board and Maine. Those are just a few of the people writing in. Somebody wrote in and said, my 4-year-old didn't get an autism diagnosis, but was diagnosed with selective mutism and sensory processing. If there's more to that question there, Samantha, it's cutting off for me. But just with getting a diagnosis of selective mutism and sensory processing, this is interesting.
It's very interesting. We've had a few, not our kids, but I've actually had a few siblings who have had selective mutism. Which is
Tell us, for people who don't know, what selective mutism.
It means that in some context, they are totally appropriate with their language, speech, social skills, everything, but they're choosing not to talk in usually the majority of contexts, you know, and that's why it's selective. And they're choosing when they're going to talk and when they're not going to talk, but it's not even talk, it's interacting.
They have the ability.
Yeah, so the ability's there. So when they are in, you know, usually it's home with mom or somebody, you know, they completely have they're typical kids.
Yeah.
And they're communicating the right way and they're doing everything. It's very rare. If you feel like he is on the spectrum, I would probably just go get a second opinion.
Okay.
You know?
Especially because you say there's selective mutism and a sensory processing issue, and that
combination is very rare. And now that the sensory processing is actually a part of the autism spectrum diagnosis, it makes you think like maybe something else is going on.
And let's be honest, it is not common to get, I would say statistically, and for the things that I've looked at, it's not very often that someone gets diagnosed with autism and it's incorrect, right? But it is more common that someone is incorrectly misdiagnosed as not having autism because you have a set amount of time and you're looking to see a set amount of criteria, and it's possible that you might miss something in that set amount of time. Is that?
Yeah, but I think there's still a fear of people don't want to give the autism diagnosis.
Really?
You know, a lot of our families still coming in, and it's sad because if they got diagnosis earlier, they'd get intervention earlier.
Yeah.
But what the doctors do is they start early and they'll say, oh, okay, there's some delayed speech. Oh, he's talking though. There's delayed speech, but he's talking, but he's not social. You know, so you know maybe, or he's anxious, so maybe they're more quick to say, oh, he's attention deficit, OCD, anxiety disorder. It's really interesting. Like you kind of see that. As you know, people will come in and say, "Oh, he's just ADHD with some OCD, and some sensory." And I'm thinking, okay, you're just hitting the criteria in autism, just parts of it.
Yeah.
But I think there's still this fear on doctors where they don't want to give the autism diagnosis because they feel like it's lifelong, and that's lack of education in the medical community. But there's also now where a lot of doctors feel that too many kids are getting diagnosed with autism, so they don't give it, and it's a disservice to the child.
Well, it's a terrible disservice to the family because, you know, in the old days, it used to be that kids would get diagnosed with PDD-NOS. So you wouldn't get the autism diagnosis, you get PDD-NOS, which stands for pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. But moms say pediatrician didn't diagnose. And then there's some nastiness in the NOS, because what happens is that it means that your kid was close, but they're saying didn't qualify, and so you couldn't get any services, you couldn't get any funding, you couldn't get anything done, which is the same thing when they don't diagnose your kid with autism and say, oh, well, they have ADHD. Good luck getting some services and some help and support for that, because it's not there. Yeah. You got to go find it on your own. So I'm with you. I think it's worthwhile to go and have somebody else look at this picture because you want to be eligible for services.
And it's important because with selective mutism, that means they're only talking for a very few places, and they're usually choosing not to. How did that clinician diagnosed that his language is typical in that if he won't talk in front of them.
Ah, that's a good question.
It's like, how did that happen? Do you know all this is typical if they've never been able to see this child?
Yeah. Okay. So I would definitely, I always say to parents, what does your gut say? If your gut says there's more to this, I wish somebody had said that to me when I took my son when he was losing language to the first pediatrician who was supposedly so good at seeing this. And she said, he's fine. You're overly worried because you're a late in life mom. Yeah. I lost 6 months because of that, because I listened to her. And that's the thing that's still, and I know parents that have lost, talk to Nancy. Nancy lost
Nancy
2 years because the doctor said PDD NOS. And it's not that we're mad at the doctor. We're mad at ourselves that we didn't listen to that voice. So I always say to moms and dads, if your gut says no, go to another doctor. It's just your time. And I would rather be over concerned than under concerned.
Yeah, I've told so many parents, if your child gets diagnosis and they get therapy and then they're wrong, later on you can come back and tell me, okay, if you really feel like he wasn't, come tell me. If it makes you feel better, but at least your child is typical. If you wait, you lose the time and maybe your child won't get to that point.
Absolutely. Now, somebody else has written in and said, my daughter often gets really mad before she starts talking and wants no distractions and full attention, or she will throw a tantrum. How to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, her tantrum is basically all those words she can't tell you, like, I can't focus if there's other things going on. I really need your attention now. Can you stop doing? Typical kids want their parents' attention, really focused. I don't know if she gives an age, but they know how to use their language to control the environment. I really need your attention now. Can I just talk to you? Can you just stop what you're doing? Yeah. And they're saying the same things, but if this child doesn't know how to do all that, and she knows if she throws a tantrum and your whole attention has come to her, she's going to throw the tantrum. And she's probably very frustrated too, because she just wants to communicate whatever it is and can't do it. And maybe, all these things going around her do distract her. Or maybe she has some inflexibility too, where she can only do it if this criteria happens. And if it's not happening and it never happens, because how many moms aren't distracted by something else when they're interacting with their kids, because there's usually more kids than other people, and life it's so frustrating. And it goes back to communication and language. When kids tantrum and have these behaviors, it's their form of communication.
And she says, it's me again. It's my daughter's 3rd evaluation. I don't know why it's not coming up. Oh, there it is. It's my daughter's 3rd evaluation and didn't get autism. So this is the same mom that she gets mad before starts talking. I didn't realize it's the selective mutism. Daughter's 3rd evaluation and didn't get autism. One was unidentified neurological disorder, and recently the selective mutism. I wish she got diagnosed with autism so she can get ABA. It's frustrating. Plus her brother had autism, so it's likely she has it too. So she's gone to 3 evaluations.
Where do you
live?
Where do you live?
Write in and tell us where you live. And it's time to get selective about who you go to.
Yeah, and it's important that they see the child more out of the office.
Okay.
Or at least maybe if you can provide FaceTime or videos to the clinician, because not very many clinicians will leave their office. So if you can provide video clips, start like videotaping her, and when she is having tantrums and when she's communicating normally.
Okay, we have to take a break, but we're going to be right back after these messages. Stick with us. You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman. We're here doing allergy-free cooking, and I brought my sister with me today.
Jamie Davis, thanks for having me.
A lot of people are asking about an allergy-free breakfast, and breakfast can be full of crap.
But it's full of crap and it's hard to do. We don't have time in the morning. We're in a hurry.
We're going completely nut-free. The recipe is not
personality. We can't do anything about.
Yeah, can't do anything about that. So we're going to start off first with I'm using sorghum and brown rice flour. I find the texture good, and I've added some flaxseed meal. We talked about that last time. Flaxseed meal for poop, Almost every one of our kids has a poop issue. What's next on the recipe is the quinoa flakes, baking powder, cinnamon, and the xanthan gum. It brings the glutinous texture back into the flour. And often what happens with these recipes is they can fall apart. This one holds up nicely. I like it. For the folks that are egg-free, we have a ton of egg replacers. One of those can be the arrowroot starch or bringing back some additional flax seeds. So there's a lot of options to go eggless, but we're going to go egg full in this one. For sweetener, I use the maple syrup. I stay away from refined sugar. What I'm adding now is the coconut milk, maple syrup, and a little bit of the coconut oil. And we're going to add in the raisins, craisins, and chocolate chips at the end. I find that chocolate chips can coax people to eat some really amazing things. When we started, Jeff had 42 food allergies, so we had to get creative in how we cooked. So nuts were a big, big issue. What I like now is that he can tolerate so many more things after we start doing this diet. So let me show you how you can deal with this sticky stuff here. You get your fingers really wet, and you can push it down. So my oven has been preheated. It's at 350 degrees. So we're gonna just throw this in. Like I said, I like it around 23 minutes, and the magic oven says, I'm done. Looks like, don't you love magic ovens? They're awesome. There we go, pops right out. The texture of these, and it's so pretty. It looks almost like a big chocolate chip cookie, but you actually made it healthy. But you can be my guinea pig. Tell me what you think.
That looks really good.
Doesn't it? So the textures and the colors in there are just beautiful. So the raisins are for you, the chocolate chips are for your kid.
I can't believe it's gluten-free.
I know, right? It doesn't taste like, you know, crap. We're wrapping up another cooking show. If you have feedback, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We're, of course, on Facebook. You could go to facebook.com/autismlive. And of course, Taka Now has thousands of recipes. Join me there, and we can cook some more later on. So thanks for joining us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild, let's get.
Welcome back to Autism Live. If you're wondering what happened, Evelyn Kung was urgently called away, someplace that she needed to be, and so we needed to let her go, but it wasn't that she doesn't love you. So I wanted to say that. We didn't get to finish in talking about giving our kids language, and it's funny because we had a question that came in on the live feature about that as well. There are a couple of things that I just wanted to add to what Evelyn was saying, and then there's a question that very specifically I can answer. But it's so frustrating when you cannot get what you need. And sometimes it can be so frustrating that we choose to shut down. And if you watch the show, there's a story that I tell about a real day. If my husband's watching, he won't appreciate this. But we went to take my son to go shoe shopping. And we went to one of those big sporting goods stores so that he could get a pair of sneakers, tennis shoes, And I was not having a good day. It was not my best day. And it was a very hot day. And, there was a lot of bending over, and my son was distracted. It was very loud in the store. He was having his own sensory thing, and, he was interested in something else. So I was having to bend over and help him with every single shoe. He was, pretending like he was a doll and not helping me at all. And he was old enough that, he should have been helping me a little. And I was having to bend over, tie every single shoe, and then, then there'd be a pile of shoes, and I was putting them all back. My husband was there too, but he was fascinated in a new line of shoes that they had. So he was distracted. Plus there was a sale over there. So he was looking at that, and it was like corralling two puppies, right? And I kept going, guys, we need to get these shoes, but I was getting so frustrated that I couldn't quite get it clear to them what I wanted them to do. And it was two very different things that I wanted to do. And I was overwhelmed, and I just didn't have command of all the language that I have when I'm here with you and relaxed. And finally, I got so frustrated that I laid down on the floor in the store and said, you're not listening to me, and I'm going to lay here until you do. And embarrassed them within an inch of their life, and both of them were furious at me, and my husband still doesn't like to talk about it because it was just like so horrifying to him that I did this. But I am a grown woman with clear verbal skills. And because I was having other stuff that was going on for me, and I'm sure not the least of which is that I have a bad back and the bending over really, really hard. And I just got to the point where I chose, no, if I can't get what I want through being verbal, then I will get what I want through being silent and laying on the floor passively. I'll Gandhi this thing, right? So I just want to say that keep in mind what people will do out of frustration. And that sometimes like when you just look at it on paper and it goes, well, if what you want is to communicate, then it wouldn't make sense to choose not to communicate, but sometimes it does. In any case, I hope that you will write in and tell us, for that mom, where in the world that you are, and maybe we can help you to find somebody who can take a look at your child and really figure out what's going on. Somebody else had written in and said, I work with a child diagnosed with autism. The only service he has at school is speech. How can the parents get more services? And this really depends on where you are in the world, but there are lots of different things that you can do. There are some states that have California and New York, for instance, have something. In California, we call it the regional center. There's a different name for it in New York. But all states have something called Child Find, where children are supposed to be identified. If you are working with this child, you can notify Child Find that this child is struggling, and then they will connect the parent to more services. It's important to know if they're in the United States, where in the United States they are, and if it's one of the most of the states have a mandate now, because probably that family has insurance or access to insurance that would get them a bunch of services. But they're, unfortunately, a lot of times the getting started and getting into the system is overwhelming. I would tell you, if you can get the parents to be aware of the fact that they need more services, which sometimes that's an uphill battle because parents don't know. How would we know, right? But if you can help them to say, look, I've had this before in my class. I want you to know that there's all kinds of help and support. And then feel free to give them my email. And I'm happy to look at the individual thing, and then usually what I will do is farm it out to somebody who's an expert at where you're at. So if you write to me, or if they write to me and say we're in New Jersey, then I find the person who knows how to work the New Jersey system, right? Because I don't know how to work the New Jersey system. But I'm happy to be the go-between if you want to have them write to me or you write to me, whichever works best, and let's one family at a time, right? Si se puede. We hold hands. We get through this. Okay. I also, our West Virginia mom had written in talking about the language thing and said, my daughter is 6, considered high functioning. She's recently had another language explosion. Yay. Our speech team doesn't work on language as a whole. They work on articulation, and they're not interested in anything else. This week, while I was cooking, she came to me and she said she needed to ask me something, but that her body doesn't know what to do to tell me. By talking to her, I was able to gather that she wanted to know if she could help me to prepare dinner. How would I work on this? Do I need to work on building her vocabulary more, or on the social aspect of conversational speech? Thanks a bunch for all you guys do. And of course, I want you to get a clinician's take on this, but I also don't want you to have to wait a week until we get Evelyn Kung back. But I will tell you that both are great to work on, and I know that you're a skills user. So absolutely. And I also want to tell all of you to take a look at some of the episodes in the A Word. That's our A Word, not the British television show. Our A Word that we show here, we'll show an episode in just a few minutes. There's a whole series where they talk about teaching Jack Riley how to gain someone's attention appropriately. So for the daughter who gets so mad when she wants to talk and can't have any distractions, same kind of lesson. And same thing here too, how to first gain attention, because it's like a string of things that have to happen. And probably she was so overwhelmed about, well, first I would have to get mom's attention. Then I would have to explain to her that I want to do what you're doing. And then I'm going to have to deal with whether she says yes or no. I mean, it's a long chain of things that go with this. So, but we start with getting somebody's attention. And it sounds like your daughter did fairly well at that. And think about how amazing it is that she was able to convey to you, I want something and I don't know how to do it. Man, you think you just had an explosion of language? Wait until you see what's about to happen, because to have had that awareness is great. It means you're cooking on all burners. But yeah, she's gonna need some vocabulary words. And one of the things that you wanna do is set her up with phrases that she can just memorize. And we all have done this in our lives, right? Just maybe not as consciously as you're going to do with her, but phrases that can help you to do something. Like at some point we learned to say, excuse me, right? It was just a phrase that we memorized. If you think about it, we don't honestly think about what we're saying when we say, excuse me. We're interrupting and we know that, but it's just something that we've memorized. So if you give her little phrases and things that she can sort of memorize so that she doesn't have to think through those, and then you teach her the vocabulary of the other things that are specific, right? So she can learn to say, excuse me. And one of the things that they taught my son, because he hates being interrupted, hates it. And so he learned to say, give me just a minute. Oh my gosh. He uses that. I've said to him, you got to find a new phrase, not just that one all the time. He says, give me just a minute. And it's just an automatic thing that he says to me now, but it gives him a placeholder. Everybody understands it. Give me a second means I gotta cool, slow my roll, as they say. That he needs a second. He's in the middle of something. It gets him what he needs. So tons of lessons that are available. And maybe next week we can have Evelyn Kung talk specifically about what some of those lessons are and skills. But I think you want to work on both. I really do. In any case, I'm just checking, and I thank you all for all your patience. And as I said, we will have Evelyn Kung back next week. But in just a second here, we're going to go to the A word. I want to remind everybody that in our next hour, it's Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Special guests, a packed hour, so I'm glad that we're getting done a little bit early so that we get the full time for the hour. But we've got Vince Redmond, licensed marriage family therapist. We're going to talk about resentment in just a minute here. And then we've got some in the news for you, and a fabulous, fabulous dad who is really making a difference, helping individuals with different abilities, not disabilities, but different abilities to get the training that they need so that they can have not only jobs, but careers, and good careers. So we're going to be talking about all of that in just a few minutes. We're going to take a break, and then I think then we're going to the A word, and then we'll be back with Let's Talk Autism. Is that pretty much how that's going to work, Samantha? We threw out the rule book. But thanks you guys for sticking with us. We're going to be back with Let's Talk Autism, so don't go away. Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself, how on earth can I afford ABA therapy for my child? Well, the short answer is you can't. No one can. It's really expensive and it's overwhelming to most families. But the story doesn't end there, fortunately. The first thing that I want you to think about is tapping insurance resources. So many insurance companies are paying for ABA therapy right now. So that's your first best bet. Make sure and see if your insurance company is providing benefits for ABA therapy, and check back often. Now, if you see that you don't have insurance right now for ABA, don't panic, there are still other resources. The next place to go is to your local support groups and ask them what local resources there are. That's a great place to ask for information because often states and even counties have support for ABA. And then beyond that, you might consider applying for grants. There are many fabulous grants out there to help you to get support for your ABA therapy. But most important, it's absolutely essential that you get ABA services for your child. We know that that's essential for all of our children and that you won't be able to do it on your own. So seek out those services and support groups that will help you to fund your ABA journey. It's really important to remember that all behaviors happen for a reason.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. It's January and a whole new year has gone by. To commemorate that, Autism Live and Smarty have decided to give you a template to make your very own time capsule. The materials you'll be needing are glue, a jar, photos, keepsakes, pen, and a template you can print from facebook.com/autismlive. Here's the template that I printed out from our Facebook page. Depending on the skill of your child, they can do this independently, or you're going to help them fill out all the questions. Once you have finished filling out the time capsule sheet, I've left 2 spaces on the top, one for a school photo, one for a family photo. Feel free to glue an image there. Now that I've glued the photos onto my sheet, now I'm going to grab my jar and start filling it up with all the things I would want to remember from the year that just passed. I would say include photos, mementos, toys, things that are going to be really important to you at this time and moment that you'll be excited to see later in the future. Once you're done filling up your jar with all the things that were important to you for the year 2013, you're going to want to seal it up. And it's up to you for how long you want to keep it locked up. Time capsules are a great way to remember where you have been and where you're going. So I hope you really enjoy this activity, and until next time, craft on, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side? I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast. I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
This is the sign they haven't. If you go that way, it would be to the end. So I have to go this way. I'm just remembering this is the school.
He has this new infatuation with streets. First, we thought it was pretty cool because he was, it was like sight words, like he was learning how to read the street signs. And that was really cool. But then it turned into his new fetish, I guess you can say, where he starts to perseverate on the ways to go to like dad's work, the ways to go to school, the ways to go to camp, and like. It's cool that he remembers how to go to places, but then it's to the point where if you take a different route, he gets really inflexible. So we're starting to break it and starting to redirect him to better questions like, oh, why are we taking this street? Or where are we going? Or who's going to be there? Who am I going to see? More questions that are more relevant than street names. Are you playing your map still? Here's the deal, listen. You can play on your iPad, but you can't play this game.
We're very confident in the school that we're using this year. We're very happy there's only going to be 14 kids in his class. He's going to have a shadow, brilliant shadow. So I'm excited about the school year.
We already set up goals for him at school. So a lot of them will be, for the most part, will be social goals, but we also have goals such as like him accepting changes in routine, being flexible about things. And for social goals, we have him initiating conversation with peers and also having him be able to make at least 2 exchanges with the peer, whether it be answering a question or making a similar statement. For instance, like if the kid's like, oh, I like Toy Story, and he could say, oh, I like Toy Story too. or something else like, oh, I don't like Toy Story, I like, A Bug's Life or something. Something else that is relevant, and he knows how to use these conversation skills that we've been teaching him at home and trying to generalize it with kids that are his age.
She's going to try to be noticed as little as possible by the teachers and the students. She's going to help all the kids so as not to stigmatize Jack. Well, the teacher said something very nice in our meeting today, and that is she wants him to have a friend. She wants him to, and he has kids he adores, but I don't know that he has a true friend yet where they engage and play together, and so I'm looking forward to that.
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Allspot Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod, and grateful to be here with you.
Grateful to be here with you too.
It's a wonderful day. We got a big show. In fact, we normally we start within the news, but we're going to push that back a little bit later because we're so excited that we have Vince Redmond with us via Skype. And for those of you who don't watch the show, we love Vince. Vince is a licensed marriage and family therapist. And he, not only is he that, and that's a fabulous thing, something we need, but Vince started his career as a behavioral therapist, so he understands ABA, which I think is just such a vital thing. And on top of all those things, Vince is the head of Card Family Services, which is all the good and extra things that make sense that families need. So we love having Vince with us on a monthly basis. And so, Vince, thank you for being with us again today.
My pleasure. Good morning.
Good morning. You're looking all handsome and spiffy there in your plaid. And I asked today, I don't even know if I told you this, Nancy, that I asked if we could talk about resentment.
There's all forms of resentment, though, on all sides. Which kind of resentment?
Well, I just think that there's so much resentment when you have a child with autism, right? There's resentment for the fund holders who don't, give the money up. We walk around with a lot of resentment for that. Right. I think sometimes there's resentment. I think there's always resentment in a relationship, whether it's loving relationship, any kind of spousal relationship. I don't mean to say just husband and wife, all spousal relationships. And I think sometimes I'm going through a thing right now where my kid resents me. Right. I'm going through that. Right. And I think sometimes we resent the whole thing, right?
We resent having to be autism parents.
Right.
We see other people with typical children and we resent them because they have an easy life.
Absolutely. And go, how did that happen?
Right.
How did every other people who have 8 kids and none of them are on the spectrum, and we have one and they're on the spectrum. Right. I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of resentment. So I asked Vince if we could talk a little bit about resentment and how we deal with that from both sides. How do we deal with it when we're the one that's feeling resentful, and how do we deal with it when somebody else is feeling resentful?
Yeah. So that's a big topic. Yeah, it's a lot. Where do you want to dig in there?
That's a very open-ended topic. I mean, there's a lot to. I mean, and the first thing to understand is part of that is very reasonable and very understanding and very normal to be able to, or to feel the resentment and to feel those feelings because, like you said, there's a lot of things that happen, either it be the relationship between the parents and the child, or it be a parent and a parent, or it be a parent and another loved one, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, what have you, or again, like you were saying, extending it to neighbors, friends, and colleagues. There's a lot of different emotions that play into this, and the key to this is emotions, right? Resentment is a direct link to your emotional reactivity to certain, to certain stimuli, to certain things. Again, seeing another typically developing child, there's feelings that are raised, or a parent that doesn't really understand the trials and tribulations that a parent with an autistic child has to go through. There's these emotional reactions to this. And so the key to resentment is two things. One is understanding it and where it comes from, and then two, how to mediate it, how to cope with it. You can't make it go away. It's not something where there's a magic intervention that you won't feel any resentment. It's a very natural and a very appropriate emotion to have. So how do we cope with it so that we can make it functional? How can we cope with it so that it doesn't impede on our life? And by understanding it and being able to cope with it, then we're able to encapsulate it so that it doesn't ruin relationships, it doesn't ruin any interventions that we're doing, it doesn't ruin your happiness overall.
And so one of the things that jumps out at me, because I always want to have a resentment-ectomy. Like, I just want to be able to cut it. I want to go to somebody and have it cut off and removed, like a mole that we don't like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just get. So you're saying that's not a possibility. That we've got to accept that it's there. But then, Vince, I am not good at moving it into something that's productive. Are you?
No,
Is that
I'm not.
something?
I'm not.
I know people who get over it faster than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do to get and imagine if we're like that, our
Right.
kids can hold on to something
Right.
infinitely longer. Although I think sometimes they're better.
Yeah.
Jem gets mad about something and holds a resentment about something, but it appears to go away, and then it'll pop its ugly head up every once in a while. So how do you move?
Yeah, how do we move past it? How do we move through it?
And the funny thing is, that's not just Jem, that's all of us.
Yeah.
Right? All of us will have resentment, and then we'll push it down, or we get busy and with work and school and all the things that we do, and then all of a sudden, boom, it comes right back up, and we don't know where it came from. Well, it's because it wasn't thought through, it wasn't processed through yet. And what you were saying, Jen, that's actually what we do want to do. We do want to have interventions to where we can take the emotion from here and get it to here, right? When we can get it into our mind, we can reason and logic through things, understand things, right? And that's why I had paired it into the two things of understanding and coping. Because when we can get the emotional reactivity to our minds in a calm state, we're able to then understand and reason that this isn't something to be upset about, or this isn't something that they might have done to us on purpose, right? Again, we're resentful of maybe another experience that someone else is experiencing. It's not a purposeful act on us, even though we still feel that feeling. So what we need to do is come up with different exercises, which I know it changes per person, but different things to help, calm ourselves, reduce our anxieties, reduce our emotional reactivity, so that we can then get it to reason. We can get it to where we can think through things. And then as soon as we process it, we're able to move on. We're able to do other things. Breathing exercise, controlled breathing exercises, visual imagery, those types of things, physical activity. Those are all very good ways to regulate your emotions so that your anxiety goes down, blood pressure goes down, breathing, slows down, and then we're able to think and process a lot better. Now,
I'm going to interrupt you 1 second, Vince, because we had a lovely comment come in from Holly. She says, that goes right along with what you're saying. She says, I try to remember that everyone has a different path. For example, my child is completely nonverbal, but he walks. And she has a smiley face. She says, my child won't eat anything except waffles for the most part, but he doesn't require a feeding tube, and then a smiley face. So she's turning
perspective.
Yeah, turning it around and remembering what to be grateful for, which I think goes right exactly. It's reasoning through it and going, okay, may not have this, but I have this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, Holly. Thank you.
And I'm sure Holly, and that's fantastic. And I'm sure Holly is able to control, has that same reaction that we all do, but she's learned, and she's over time, to how to calm herself, right? How to regulate her breathing, how to regulate her emotions, so that she's then able to think of those things, which is fantastic. And I think that's been very successful.
Yeah, and I think when I'm my highest self, when I've taken a moment to take a breath, I can get to all the things that I'm grateful for. But sometimes I'm not my highest self, and sometimes I would like to teach this more to my child too, to deal with it. But you can't give away what you don't have.
No,
right? So in the moment, maybe some, as you were saying, Vince, some breathing exercises to get us calm enough so that we can get to this moment, to our highest self.
It seems as though gratitude is almost the opposite of resentment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's true. That's true. And again, everyone's different. Everyone, there's different techniques and things that can be used for everything. But one of the real basic breathing techniques is making sure that we have elongated breaths through our nose and out our mouth. So we expand our lungs to full capacity slowly and exhale slowly. And if we do that 7 times, we're able to start bringing down our blood pressure, our breathing rates, and we're able to ebb kind of that emotional overreactivity that we feel, right? Either it be excitement, it could be anger, it could be resentment, it could be jealousy, it could be any emotion. Again, it's just an emotional response. And what it does is it helps calm us so that we're able to use reason and logic a lot better. And then what happens then? Then we have to think through the situation, because every situation is different. Using Holly's example, he only eats waffles, but he's not on a feeding tube, which I'm very grateful, and he's very happy when he eats his waffles. That's a good, a replacement thought to be able to think, because it makes her realize, or makes her feel more comfortable in where they are, not only in their program, but where they are, in life.
It kind of reminds me of the Byron Katie thing that she calls the work. It's a 5-step process where, you find whatever the belief is that's really kicking your can. And then you have to ask yourself through a series of steps, is it true? And if it is true, is the opposite true? And that always, when I remember to do that, I find that the opposite is almost always true.
So what does that mean?
So for
Give
instance,
me an example.
okay, so for an example, I might say to myself, my husband has more free time than I do. Okay. And I can get resentful about that. He has more free time than I do. And so then I have to ask myself, is that true? Well, right out the gate, I'm like, well, I don't really know if it's true.
Right.
And so is the opposite true? I have more free time than my husband. Well, you know what? Sometimes I do. Mm-hmm. So it's not this black and white thing already.
Right.
And then I have to dissect it a little bit more. And what I frequently find is, well, I'm really grateful that my husband has the free time that he does.
Right.
And the reason why I don't have as much free time as he has sometimes are things that I've chosen to do.
Yes.
It wasn't that he took my free time away.
You. Right. It's not
I chose, and you know why I chose it? Because it was something I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So why am I resentful at him that he has more free time? So by the end of it, I'm like, oh, what a great guy he is. But I started with, he has more free time than I do.
Right.
Who's running this show? My inner shrew starts to visit. So, but I kind of love the idea of turning whatever the thought is on its head.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what exactly you're talking about, Vince. If we can pivot here for a second, we've had a question come in from a viewer that doesn't quite have to do with this, but I think you'd be a great person to answer it. Are you game,
Sure.
Vince? So
Sure.
Karen has written in and said, just had my 6-year-old diagnosed with ASD and ADHD combined. What is the next step? Who do I speak to next? She says, totally in limbo. Plus, we are newcomers to Canada. And I don't know whether she's come to Canada from the United States or someplace else, but you talk to a lot of parents. What would you advise to be the next step if they've just been diagnosed with ASD and ADHD combined?
Yeah, and that's difficult because again, it's a different country and different, medical systems and so forth. My first instinct is to go to their pediatrician and ask for, any referrals. I know, referrals to specialists that specialize in ADHD and or autism. Ask, if they're aware of any ABA treatment centers, ABA, treatment programs that are around them. And see where, what resources they might have, as well as looking at the medical system. I know it's a national system, but to see where, what ABA services are around. It might take some research. It might take some, some time. But I'm pretty sure now with the internet and the medical professionals, there should be, some referrals and resources to either direct services or to at least to a liaison that might be able to know where those services are. I know, like here in California, would be a regional center or something like that. So I'm confident that there would be some liaison that would know those. But the question is, or not question, but I think the first thing is asking those direct questions. Asking directly about ABA services, asking directly about ABA programs or centers that might be around specifically to work with their child, because as we know, ABA is the only scientifically proven treatment for autism. So that would be my first direct question for the doctors. And if they don't know that, then I would ask them if they at least know who to contact that would be able to know those resources in her Providence or in her area.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
ABA is the name of the game,
Right.
best place to start.
Yeah.
I know that in Canada they have ABA services, and the difficulty, because we've covered it in the news stories, is getting diagnosed. So the fact that you've already got a diagnosis is going to put you ahead of the game, but you're going to have there are waiting lists for the diagnosis, and then waiting lists. So to get the ABA, you're going to have to get on the waiting list as soon as you possibly can. Now I know that there has been some discussion.
Well, in the meantime, while she's waiting, and this is just prompted by what's on the desk there,
yes,
is skills. So in between that, if there is a wait list, she can, definitely look at getting a subscription to skills and maybe even starting some of the assessments so that she can see, what developmental areas, strengths, and weaknesses her child might have. Because again, as a parent, we don't know as much as we think we know about our kids until there's an actual assessment where we can see the exact strengths and weaknesses and where they are. So then maybe she could even start, doing some lessons and things with her child while that wheel is rolling, while she's on a waiting list, because you don't want any kid in family, again, I always look at the full family, sitting on a waiting list, just waiting.
Right.
We have different opportunities for them to at least start not only their education, but possibly some treatment while they're waiting.
Okay.
And the
Very
time
good.
spent doing the assessment is going to serve you for the next however many years. Believe me, it's time well spent. But Vince, this is a great question for you, because I'm always unclear about when a family is going to start, whether to send them to IBT first or send them to skills first. Do you think skills is the better place to start?
Well, it's the apple or the chicken or the egg, really.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna need both. For me, I would first start with the assessment. I would get the skills account. I would start with the assessment, so then I'm knowledgeable in where they are developmentally. Then they can go, then be able to contact IBT, the Institute for Behavioral Training, and be able to start taking some of their resources, some of their trainings, so that I could better understand how to implement ABA. What is ABA? What is, a behavior modification plan? What is, a function of a behavior? And those kind of more intricate technical, details on how to apply, the lessons. But, for me, I would want to understand my child, understand their development, understand their weaknesses, understand where their needs are, and then be able to plug in the services and or treatments at that point.
Absolutely. Okay. So just for everybody to take a second here, Skills, which is an online tool that anybody can have access to. It's a subscription based. You can do a 14-day free trial. It's Skills for Autism, FORautism.com, or the phone number is 877-975-4559. There is an Autism Live discount because we've referred so many people. We got you guys a discount. So make sure when you sign up for it, you tell them that Shannon sent you. You want the Autism Live discount. It's a sizable discount, so it's a really good thing. And
IBT, do you have the place for that?
And Samantha had put it up on the screen. IBT stands for Institute for Behavioral Training. It's ibehavioraltraining.com. And what it is an online training that you can choose. They train the highest level of people, BCBAs. They can take their continuing education units. There's a segment for treatment providers. There's a segment for teachers and educators, and there's a segment for parents. And what I love is they don't tell you which one you have to do. Mm-hmm. So if you know, I'm new here, I don't know this language, you're going to want to start with the parent section. And which is going to be easier. They're not going to use a lot of jargon terms. They're going to explain the jargon terms. But if you want to, you can take the one that your therapist would be taking. Mm-hmm. You can become a registered behavior technician. You can become a BCAT, which is a board certified autism technician, in a very short amount of time. You can take the time to do that. All of the things that we have mentioned are relatively inexpensive. There is a cost for them. For Skills, without the Autism Live discount, it's like $75-ish a month. Which is, it's not nothing, reasonable. But it's very reasonable. It's, an IBT, they're modules, individual videos that let's say, I got it for myself. I could watch it and my husband can watch it. There's no extra cost for other people. I could have my babysitter watch it, whatever. And a lot of them are like $7 a piece. Some of them are $10. I think the most expensive one might be $20. And if you buy them in groups, you can get a discount there too. And we don't yet have a discount with them, but I'm working on it. But you can call them or email them and say, can I have an Autism Live discount? Wouldn't go amiss. Who knows? Maybe you can get one. But in any case, these things are there. That's what they're there for.
They're tools that can help you in the meantime before you get
so that you're not just sitting and wasting time, as Vince said. Right. So thank you, Vince, for bringing up all those things.
Thank you, Vince, for joining us today and going over these topics. We're a little bit better on resentment. We're going to flip it.
That's a good refresher course. Yeah. To remind ourselves that we don't have to be stuck in the moment.
No, we don't.
That we could turn around. So thank you always, Vince. We also, if you are a CARD client, at some point on your journey, you will connect with Vince because, as I said before, he is the director of the CARD Family Services. Anything you want to say about that, Vince, that you want people to know that CARD Family Services does?
Just the first thing that just popped in mind was I'll actually be in the San Diego area offices on February 8th and 9th. So if there's any families that would like to meet with me and set up an individual meeting, please reach out to the office and we can schedule that. And again, any of the CARD families, we're here as a resource to you guys for anything, either it be finding resources in the community, talking through things, helping any concerns or questions you might have about programming and or how to continue to build relationships with your local office. So if there's any need that you guys have, we're here to help.
Okay, and I just want to say too that CARD has something called a PTA. I don't usually talk about it on the show because it's just for CARD parents. PTA stands for Parents That Are Truly Amazing, and I host a monthly call. And a lot of times we have guests, and in February our guest is Vince Redmond. So if you're a CARD parent, and if you haven't already been on a CARD PTA call, email me and let's get you on the call, and Vince will be our guest for the month of February. And Vince, we're deeply appreciative for you for doing that.
No problem.
All right.
Have a great rest of the week, ladies. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks for being with us.
Vince. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right, we're going to take a short break,
We've
and
got
then we're
some in
coming
the
back.
news.
Let's do news at the end, don't you
At
think?
the end?
Or do you want to do it now?
We could do it now.
All right, let's do it now. Nancy's
Let's
wild
take
and
a
willing.
quick break, and
All right,
we'll
quick
come back
break.
and do some in the news.
Okay, stick with us.
Okay.
Nope, she says 1 second. So a couple of things that we're going to be covering
Oh,
for in
okay.
the news. I added one this morning because once again the bleach story has reared its ugly head.
Yes.
This
when
time
did this
in
come back?
Newsweek. This week again, every couple of months, this rears its ugly head again. And just when we think, look, we understand as parents that people who are new and can be preyed upon.
And can be desperate.
And can be very desperate. And if they hear that something is going to be helpful to their child, we all want to hear those stories, right? But we all need to keep spreading the word and telling other parents that feeding your child bleach is not
It's not safe
acceptable.
under any circumstances.
It's child abuse, and yet there are more families that are doing it. In fact, there are groups that are charging families to be a part of a secret society
Right,
where they're
to
doing
do
this,
this treatment.
and children are being injured. So please, let's I didn't want to put it back in because we've
Right.
talked about it before, but let's all be
It's
a part
just,
of
in
spreading
England,
the word.
6 British police forces probed cases in which children as young as 2 years old were forced to undergo this potentially lethal treatment.
It is.
And I was surprised to hear that this method was promoted by a U.S. church with a branch in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The mysterious Genesis 2 church.
Yeah. Well,
That was formed by a former Scientologist. I had
Yes.
no idea about the origins of this treatment.
We must have covered it on a Thursday because this has been all over the place. It's been in Europe, but it has ties to a church here in Los Angeles. And basically what they do is they show families these pictures of what comes out of a child's intestine
Right.
when they have ingested some bleach, and it looks like it's these long tapeworms.
Yeah.
And they say, look, this is evidence that your child had this other problem, but that's not what it is. They've done research on these long things that come out, and what it is the lining of the child's intestine.
Yeah, so it's causing serious and
It is
potentially
not
long-term
okay.
and potentially lethal.
Yes, the child can become very ill and or lose their life. So no bleach.
Okay.
We're gonna take a
quick
break.
and we'll be back with more news.
All right, stick with us.
What is autism? What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to,
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love. The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
And we're back with Let's Talk Autism, and we have some more in the news stories. This is an interesting story that researchers at Oregon State University have found a way to use zebrafish to create a model for studying autism. That the zebrafish are useful because they develop in 5 days. They have similar DNA to humans.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, they've used them for other research, for other diseases.
And so in as little as 5 days, they can have a model in which they can create an environment in which the fish then displays autistic tendencies, and then they can try out treatments on it, and they're hoping that it's going to lead to a future chemical and environmental interaction that will help with autism. And we just last week on the show, we had Dave Humphrey back talking about the fact that the EPA has come out with a big paper saying that autism is at least 60% environmental. That, okay, there is a genetic component, but that the environment
is the
bigger aspect of it. And if you think about it, we have infinitely more control if we decided to over environmental factors. So this is a very interesting thing. I don't know about you. It's a little bit bittersweet for me because I have issues about testing on animals, but it's a fish, and isn't it terrible that I read this and I was like, oh, I feel bad about the fact that I'm like okay with it being a fish but not a puppy. Isn't that there's it's a little bit of a dicey thing.
It's like people that are pescatarians as opposed to vegetarians.
Well, I don't.
Somehow it's not as bad being a fish.
I don't like that anything is manipulated. I wouldn't want somebody to be testing on me. Right. But I care less about fish and apparently
puppies.
They grow in 5 days, and I'm like, okay, so they're going to get tested on. I feel guilty about it, but if it helps with autism, I'm signing up for it.
That's good.
Right.
Another story about children with autism may benefit from being bilingual.
Yeah.
Because it helps improve cognitive flexibility in children with autism.
And this is a study in the Journal of Child Development. I absolutely love this. We've had people write in many times and say, is it inappropriate that... I remember the mom who said, I want my son to learn Chinese. He's struggling with English, and my mother-in-law thinks I've lost my mind. But the kid was loving Chinese, and we all said, here, go for it. And he was picking up Chinese and Chinese is not easy. So I love that it's showing that there are cognitive benefits, that it helps with flexibility, it helps with executive functions. I think this is really cool.
It was a relatively small study, it was with 40 children.
But it kind of makes sense. Especially the way we teach English now. English is a very difficult language, and the way we teach English is not the way that we used to. But oddly enough, a lot of times when you're taught a foreign language, you're taught the way English used to be taught. And I used to see, as an English teacher, that kids who were taking Spanish and French knew much more about how to put together a sentence properly than the kids who didn't, just because of the way they were taught. So it makes sense to me. And then, of course, big news that as we look here at our government in the United States, there's a lot of stalemate, right?
Right.
But there's only one thing that it appears that all of the branches of our government have agreed to in the last week, and that was a bill called RAISE, which is for caregivers.
Recognize, assist, include, support, and engage family caregivers is what the acronym stands for.
And everyone is standing up and applauding the fact that this passed the House and the Senate, and that the president signed it into bill, and that this is a huge, huge watershed moment. It's the one thing that these people can all agree about. And everybody has been cheering, and I don't mean to be a wet blanket. I'm thrilled that they agreed on something, and I'm thrilled that what they agreed on was the importance of taking care of caregivers. I do want to point out, however, that there are absolutely no funds attached to this law at all.
It's a national strategy to recognize and support the more than 40 million caregivers.
And it's got a time limit on it.
Right. And it establishes an advisory board that will bring together stakeholders from the private and public sectors.
Okay, they have to do that within they have to have a strategy within 18 months. And then within the 3-year period, they have to have the board. And the things that they've been tasked with looking at, and potentially more, but some of them looking at respite services and options, workplace flexibility, financial security and workplace issues, information, education, training, and support for navigating the healthcare system. We'd all love that. Assessment and service planning, including care transitions and coordination involving recipients and family caregivers, and broad consideration of person and family-centered care in all health and LTSS settings with the person and the family caregiver when appropriate at the center or for care teams. It's great that they're going to sit and talk about it. I want to point out that we had the International Autism Commission, who was put together with no funding, and they're going to sit and talk about, and you know, have we seen anything monumental come from that?
Nothing yet.
Just want to say,
Yeah.
it's better than nothing.
Right.
As my mother used to say, it's better than a, you know, a knock in the head, but that and a dime will get you nothing.
Right. It's
I don't
what
know.
comes out of the talk.
Right, right. Let's move it in a direction and get some funding. Okay, so we got a great guest.
Yes, coming up.
Yep. Somnath Sengupta. We hope we're
Very
saying it
good.
right. And he is from Every Life Works. And we're going to talk with him. He's a dad, an amazing dad, a very knowledgeable dad. We're going to talk with him about these micro enterprises that he has started to help get individuals with different abilities to work.
Employed,
Yes, employed and have careers. So all of that after these messages. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Johansson, and this is My Little House.
My Little House is an interactive, multi-sensory educational felt toy that I invented to help develop children's language skills.
I love My Little House.
I've been working as a speech therapist for over 20 years. I have spent my entire career working with young children. I work with children with language delays, and I have many children with significant cognitive disabilities and children on the autism spectrum. It has been a constant challenge finding toys that are fun, educational, and actually engage my students. In every preschool, since I've been a young therapist, we carry on these felt boards. Kids love them because they're soft and they're fluffy, and there's usually these little pieces that attach to these boards because felt sticks onto felt. You bring them into the activity because they're putting a piece on the board. So it's almost kind of like magic. So then I just thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just take this one-dimensional board and make it into an actual three-dimensional toy? How cool would that be?
That's the idea behind My Little House. You can spread it out flat like a 4-panel felt board, or here's the cool part. In the blink of an eye, My Little House easily converts into a 3-dimensional reversible house.
This is the outside. This is the inside.
My Little House comes with 36 felt cutout pieces that match outlines in 8 colorful rooms. And they're felt, so they stick. Each piece inside My Little House has been placed with purpose.
For instance, in the kitchen, whole, half, under, on top, inside, big, bigger, and biggest, empty and full, circle, triangle, inside, outside.
Really cool thing, I have a nonprofit, Lecotech. They are the folks that put out the Differently Abled Guide for Toys R Us. They've been doing it for 25 years. They gave me their seal of approval as a toy that they feel is a toy with purpose, and that will make a difference. But My Little House isn't just for kids on the spectrum or with significant disorders. It's also for typically developing 2 to 5-year-olds. It's a fun toy.
Oh, this is so soft. That piece goes.
Recently, I took My Little House to the American Speech and Hearing Association convention in Philadelphia, and the response from my peers was overwhelming. Hundreds of therapists, teachers, and heads of school districts wanted to order them.
It was real validation for me that this truly is a toy that needs to get out there.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod. I'm a proud autism mom, I'm a former educator, and I am the host of Autism Live. And as all 3 of those things, I want to recommend to you My Little House. This is one of the smartest toys I have ever seen for teaching language to kids who have emerging language. Whether they're on the autism spectrum or completely neurotypical, it's a great, fun, reinforcing toy, but it's especially great for our kids that are on the autism spectrum because it makes learning fun and it makes it tactile. They have these felt shapes and they get to match them up. And I'm telling you, even the adults love to play with this. We loved this toy so much that we wanted to be able to bring it to you at a great discount. So right now, if you will go to www.smartfelttoys, and when you get to the coupon code, put in a-live.com, you'll get $5 off. Isn't that great? So I want to encourage you, go and get My Little House for all the kiddos in your life.
Hey, I'm Candace Cameron Bray.
Tom Bergeron.
You're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
You're watching Autism Live.
I just love that new segment that Samantha put together.
Celebrities.
Yes, I love it, love it, love it, love it.
Okay.
Anyway, Nancy and I are back, and we're joined right now via Skype by Dr. Somnath Sengupta. He is an amazing individual. First and foremost, he is an autism dad with a son who is 26 years old, but he has a PhD in electrical engineering. He is an MIT trained researcher. He's a serial entrepreneur, and someone who has had more than 20 years experience working in the defense sector for our government. So
what a background.
Yeah, we're talking somebody with expertise in many different levels. And now he's joining us today to talk about some of his new ventures, helping to ensure that young adults with different abilities can also have work experience and have careers and jobs with micro enterprises. So I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Sengupta. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Let's talk about your work and how you started establishing My Life Learning Center is the name of it.
Yeah, so, my son Joshua, after he graduated, he went on for day services, but slowly but steadily we realized that that he could probably do more.
Right.
And looking around, after when the morning program ended around 2:30, I slowly realized that between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m., when parents are still at work, there seems to be a huge gap for quality programs.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say over the period of 2 to 3, even more than that, I kind of collected all the information on what can be done in that period of time of 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Made some really serious PowerPoint presentations and went around presenting to people to collect their inputs also. And then I finally came to an analysis that, yes, there is an opportunity here to grab those 3 hours, start a small group, and train them on life skills and job skills. And that's how My Life Learning Center got started.
That's amazing.
And what does it train in what areas do you do the training?
So we operate 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And we do Mondays, we have kind of kept aside for, science and math, measuring stuff, so on and so forth. Tuesdays, since where we operate, we have a kitchen, we make food together. Also kind of learning how to measure, how to cook, how to, flip pancakes and whatnot. Although, as I tell my students that, eating is optional because sometimes we may not be cooking that great. So Wednesdays is open for assembly jobs. We get, and I can explain to you if we have time, we have kind of found a business model where we fit in pretty well.
Okay.
So we do that in Wednesdays. I have a little screen printing shop where we practice screen printing. Thursdays is left aside for volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
And Fridays, alternate Fridays, we do art that we convert, we will see in the micro business part, we have converted it into usable art products. But the other Fridays, we have just started volunteering at an alpaca farm, and the students love it.
I bet.
And where does all of this take place?
Good question.
So I'm located in Ellicott City in Maryland. And in Ellicott City, there is the Arc of Howard County. And they have graciously helped me to rent space from them. And it kind of works out pretty well because, their programs end around 3 p.m., right? So from 3 to 6, I can utilize their facilities, and they have a great facility.
Wonderful. And so is there a cost to the student or their family for them participating in this program?
Yes, there is. And we charge them a monthly cost, which kind of averages out. If you look at it, they're coming 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, which is 15 hours, 4 weeks a month, that is 60 hours. So it's about $6 to $7 an hour we charge them to come to this, what you might call this program. Most of the money kind of goes towards rebuying supplies, and I also put in my own money.
Bless your heart. And so they participate in this, and then at what point do they participate in the micro businesses?
So what we have done, we have, so the Learning Center is for training. So they train there on all their capabilities, screen printing, art, and whatnot, okay? But when it comes to actually, we get, believe it or not, we get orders, and you will see it in the screen printing PowerPoint. We get orders from local companies, autism societies, to screen print T-shirts for them. So that is done under the umbrella of the Every Life Works, and the students get paid.
Love it. Absolutely.
So, and you have two micro businesses. What is the other micro business?
The other one is for usable art. I call it usable art. I kind of, don't want to call it wearable art because, what we make, not all of them is wearable, but they're usable.
Okay.
So what we do is essentially we take their original art and we transfer it onto very large paintings, wall to hang it on the wall.
Right.
And we are starting to see that offices and businesses are starting to buy these.
Uh-huh.
We have also transferred these art onto scarves, tote bags, table runners, and beach towels.
Okay.
And all of them, we started doing this in 2017, I would say around October, okay? And between October and December, we have had a pretty decent amount of sale from our website, okay? So what we're going to do this year, we are going to sign up for like 6 or 7 art shows, take all those products and the students with us, and we're doing it only around Maryland and Virginia so that they can also go with us.
Okay, I really want to showcase these two businesses, and I know that you have PowerPoints that go with them. So
Yes.
which one do you want to do first?
You can start with the screen printing one because that came along first.
Okay. And so I'm going to let you take charge and tell us what information you want.
Sure. So, that's the contact information. And you can, and what we have also done, we have put in a trademark application to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office for Autism Creates. Okay.
Love it.
And if you please go back one more time, sorry about that. So that at the top right-hand corner is our logo, and that is kind of like the philosophy of everything we are doing. It is from entrepreneurial preparation for young adults with autism. And if you look at that circle at the right-hand side, there is those 3 dots, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the dots for My Life Learning Center, okay? They start out there. The 3 dots, they represent the student, the parent, and the community. And it's like a circle of life or circle of growing up. And the 3 emblems inside, there is electronics, there is screen printing, and screen printing and wearable art and everything. And someday we intend to start a small food business also, okay? Because, these kids, I call them kids, they're 21 plus, you have to kind of appeal to their senses, you have to kind of appeal to what they like. And across the board, they like to eat.
Yes.
Okay? So, and also, but if you look at the food business, if you really do it in a small scale, it has 3 shifts, right? One is the prep, one is the actual community interaction to serve it, and then the cleaning. And that can then employ a lot of young adults. So there is a possibility there, but we are not there yet.
Okay.
This is not just limited for young adults with autism, though. Is that correct?
No, they're not. I have focused on autism, but interestingly enough, I'm glad you asked this question, okay? If you really look at it, employment for young adults in this country without autism or without any neuro issues, right? What we call neurotypical adults, their employment is not at 0%. They still have unemployment. So if you ever go and look at my website at Every Life Works, what the point we make is that why not create some real sustainable micro businesses for all young adults, but have some focus on autism and any other kind of neuroatypical issues. That's the way we're looking.
So they're working side by side.
Yes. So in these businesses we have now, all the trainers, they're all neurotypical. The people who are helping them, they're all neurotypical. So they know how to interact with each other.
Right.
And as we go forward and we get more and more jobs, I intend to tap into the high school because they can come and work and they can get paid.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay.
There's another PowerPoint, right?
Well, I don't think we're done with this one yet.
Okay, so that chart kind of tells you the whole philosophy we just talked about, the approach of employee ownership. All right, so next one, screen printing micro business. We do pretty high quality product. We stay only with water-based inks because they are eco-friendly, and it supports their employment, and they learn some sustainable skills. Next chart. These are some pictures, okay? The screen printing facility, we own it, so they can practice anytime they want. And what I also do as part of my commitment to the local autism society, when we do any kind of work for them, we also try to do an open house so that anybody can come and kind of get their hands dirty.
It's lovely.
Okay. These are like 101 shameless marketing of my local. But anyway, if you can please move on.
Absolutely. Okay.
Okay, so customer directed products. So if you go to the next slide, these are some of the things we have done. Autism Society to the left. Then in the middle, there's a real estate company. The guy just started his company. He asked me to make some polo shirts, Kennedy Krieger tote bags. And believe it or not, for a company who was actually sponsoring some events with the Army Research Lab, they wanted some neckties done. So we did that for them also.
And is it competitive pricing?
Yes, it is competitive pricing, but there's a but there. I do let people know up front that these young adults, they are getting paid way above the minimum wage of the state of Maryland. $15 an hour, that's what I pay them for any amount of time they spend screen printing. Okay?
I love hearing that. That was going to be one of my next questions.
So there is an impact on the cost for that, right?
Yeah.
And I let the customers know right up front that if you're really looking for, cut price, I don't care what the quality is, I am probably not your person.
Okay.
But if you're looking for good quality work and you have impacted somebody's life, maybe you should talk to me.
Okay. Love it. Okay. We're running out of time, so onward.
Okay, so these are all the charts we have done. Anyway.
They're beautiful.
DC Public School, okay. And these are, typical. This kind of shows my Defense Department background, right? You do a PowerPoint, and at the back you put your customers. But those are the different people there. And then the customer feedback, I just put it in. Those are also on the website because we do go back and ask them if they have any problem or not. Because since we are not in it to become a humongous screen printing business, if there's any problem with the product, please let us know and we'll fix it.
But the most important thing, again, where do they go? If somebody's watching and says, look, I got to get some t-shirts soon, where do they go to connect with you?
So at the very first page is my email address, which is somnath@mylifelearningcenter.org.
Okay.
Or they can write to me at somnath@everylifeworks.com.
Okay,
If
great.
they go to everylifeworks.com, there is an order page also.
Okay. Fabulous.
Great. What are your goals? What are your goals for the future?
Goals for the future is to make these two businesses sustainable. What it means by that, so that I don't rock and roll with price only, because price-based businesses are probably not the most sustainable business. Okay, so given my background in material science and other things, there are some plans we have that at some point we should be able to converge these kind of screen printing of apparels with the usable art product and make those products more sustainable.
I'm glad you brought up the usable art, though, because we still haven't seen that. We've only got about 4 minutes. So can you talk about the usable art?
Okay. And the next thing is to add maybe 1 or 2 more micro businesses.
Okay.
So, usable art product, we are making all these canvases, totes, scarves, and beach towels. In the next page, pictures of people actually doing the original art. Okay, we have okay, if you keep going, and it just keeps showing one after another the art. Okay, these are art that has been transferred to large canvases, and these are the ones that people are buying for their offices. And all the prices and everything are on the website. Okay, and these original arts were all done by young adults with autism, with a teacher.
Those are your son, it looks like.
Some of them are my son, but then when you keep going, you will see more that are not his.
Wow.
They're beautiful.
They are.
These are not his, okay? So if you, okay, that's his.
I love the bags.
Here are the tote bags. Some of them were done by him, some of them, and not some of them. Of the 4 of them, there are 3 done by other adults, 1 done by him.
Okay.
Okay? And these are the scarves, and I can tell you the one to the left, we have been sold out of that for a while now.
Right.
For whatever reason. And each one of the scarves, by the way, comes with a little tag on it that gives their name and says Autism Creates. And when we ship it, we also send a little card signed by them saying, thank you for buying my product.
Okay.
Very nice.
And I don't know if people can see because it's small, but everylifeworks.com/shop where you can go to purchase
people
these.
order. Yes.
That's a gorgeous table runner.
And then these are the beach towels.
Okay, I've got a question for you. So if I've got a kid who is really fabulous at art, because Nancy's child, I'm telling you, is amazing, and she's got a piece of art that she wants transferred to bags or to scarves, can you do that?
Send it to me.
Okay.
Send me the picture.
Okay.
And then what we can do some mock-ups and other things to show you what it will look like. And then once you like it, then we can get it done.
Because I think, parents might be interested. Not only is the stuff that you already have gorgeous, but they might have things that they would like to see printed as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's cost effective to do a short run of but to be able to give to your teachers gifts that your son. Oh my goodness, that's a very exciting thing. Okay, all right. So what else did you want to tell us, Dr.
So that's what we are doing. One thing I do want to get out of this, this discussion is that if people have ideas for micro businesses, I would like to know.
Okay. Well, I absolutely love that.
And it doesn't matter which part of the country you're in. We can do a pilot run to see if it will work. And any micro business is transferable at any part of the country. So that's not an issue.
And this is something that you've already proven you're good at. And if somebody doesn't quite know how to do it, you're willing to help them to make that happen?
I will help anybody anywhere possible because I don't believe that the conventional route of getting interviewed, so on and so forth, is the best route yet for these young adults to be employed.
Yeah.
That's number one. And number two, since ownership creates wealth, why not try it for them and the other young adults also?
I love that.
How many young adults are you employing right now and other adults?
Right now, of my own, I have 5. But one thing what I constantly have is this Howard County ARC. They have students also that would require employment. So when this order gets bigger, I can tap into them.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for taking the time to be with us.
This is
we
the
want to
way to the
encourage people
future.
to shop.
Yes, please shop. And if you're interested in micro business and have some ideas, please contact the doctor.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, and we're here at the end of the show. We've got like less than a minute, but we want to thank all of our guests and thank Evelyn Kung for filling in today. Tomorrow on the show, we have Bonnie Yates answering some questions that you guys have given us. We have a new segment that we're going to start tomorrow featuring other card experts because we aren't getting enough questions answered that you guys write in. So on most Thursdays, we're going to have another. So tomorrow we have Karen Nolte who's going to be with us, which that's going to be really exciting. And then she is a card regional manager. Okay. So one of the top superstars at Card. We're going to be featuring all of them in the coming weeks. So it's going to be very cool. And then we have a fabulous young woman from Zip Zap Zop Enrichment who's going to be with us, and that is local here in Los Angeles. They go into the schools and they have classes that they do doing improv and theater arts with individuals with autism and other things. You're going to love it. Great talk about, I love the theater thing.
Yeah.
Improv and how beneficial it is for our kiddos and why this is something that we should be supporting everywhere. So Zip Zap Zop Enrichment tomorrow as well. That's what we've got going on. I didn't hear how much time you said we had. Did she say we're out? Okay,
Yeah,
we're out of time. So I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye for now.